I mean, probably the main narrative coming out of that Manchester United game is Trent Alexander-Arnold and his performance. There's no getting around that it was a poor performance, his worst underslot for me so far. Certainly defensively, it just seemed, one of the worst Trent performances from pre-slot. Not really interested, not chasing back. I'm always reluctant to go for knee-jerk reactions or to jump to conclusions, really. But obviously, it does come in that same week as the Real Madrid offer got rejected and news of that broke. What do you make of it? Do you make of it as a distracted performance, or we have seen performances like from Trent like this before? Is it just a coincidence? What do you make of it?
To be honest, for me, I thought possibly the worst I've ever seen him play for Liverpool. I would genuinely go that far. I mean, I felt that in the ground watching him. It just didn't feel like he was coming out on top of any battle. And then he was, and then you look at the numbers and 0 out of 5 duels won. He doesn't win a single tackle in the match. And then, sometimes, okay, if he's not going to be great defensively, you think about all that upside that he offers on the ball, and yet he creates one chance. I think he doesn't succeed with a single cross that he puts into the box out of 6 attempts. So, and that's looking at the numbers after knowing, watching it and feeling it in the ground that he didn't play very well at all. And so, as I say, I think it was for me the worst performance he's put in for Liverpool. And so, you immediately then your mind goes to, well, why is this happening? Why has he put it in now? Particularly in a game where he'd be so desperate to play well as a Liverpool fan against Manchester United, the biggest game in the Premier League for me. Why is this happening? And you have to make that jump. That it's inevitable that you will think it's something to do with these bids going in, the interest from Real Madrid, the fact he, for me, clearly hasn't made a decision on what he wants to do yet. You will make that link. And interestingly, actually, that's the first time I've ever seen the crowd in Anfield sort of make that jump and take that perception on board. I've seen it on social media so many times where he's had maybe rough moments at any point in this season that people have always heads been turned. But it's the first time I've heard the crowd around me in the press box suggest it. And it did at times, get a little bit toxic. Now, I feel for Trent in that regard. It's probably not his fault that Real Madrid are creating all the fuss. And his initial aim was to kind of keep it in-house. He didn't want it played out in public was the phrase he used, wasn't it? But I think we're getting to the point where that it's no longer his choice. I think what he's wanted to do is kind of leave himself this option open of Real Madrid so that he can use it as leverage, as leverage in contract talks, but also it is there as a potential option if he can't agree with Liverpool, or if he just essentially decides, okay, I am actually going to do this at the end of the season. But in doing that and playing both sides off against each other, he's allowed Real Madrid, the kind of agency, to step in and create a narrative and use Marca and the Spanish dailies to kind of whip up a storm a little bit, and then also start popping bids in January. I don't think that's because Trent definitely wants to go in January. I don't think he's made his mind up about what he wants to do, but he's left that option open. So for me, it's no longer available to him as an option to remain silent on this. I think he pretty much has to make a decision soon, because I think we saw the first signs in that game that if he puts in any poor performances, things are going to turn, because people are like, well, why haven't you come out in the way that Van Dijk and Salah have? Why haven't you said something about this? And yeah, as much as it's, I think it's about wanting to keep it in-house, I also think it's because he wants to kind of have his cake and eat it and leave both options open. And as I say, if the crowd starts turning against you in those situations, and I have not heard a peep about that outside of social media up until Sunday, but if that starts to turn, it starts to get toxic, it becomes very, very difficult. So I just don't think he can delay making a decision any longer or speaking about this publicly, because it is starting to turn. And I know for a fact it's going to be something that manager talks about in his press conference today. And again, it's becoming a big storm. So yeah, I think he has to say something soon, or just make that decision either way.
Yeah, the fact that the crowd did start to turn is pretty indicative of how bad the performance was, because he's been great this season. And the counter argument to the suggestion that his head's been turned is that this Real Madrid speculation has been there for years, certainly months, certainly all season while his contract's out. Obviously, the update of the offer being rejected is a big update, and there's that direct correlation. But is that he would have known that? Is that big enough of an update to suddenly see his levels drop that much? Is that direct correlation enough?
We can't really know outside of getting inside his head, and as I say, it almost doesn't matter whether it actually was that's caused the performance, because it's all about the perception, and he's left that avenue open for that perception to be created, whereby it's, like I said, guys around me sort of shouting, if you want to go, then go, things like that. So, it might not be true. This is the problem as well, is that he is definitely leaving the Real Madrid option open because he hasn't told them no. We know that for a fact. If he told them no, there wouldn't be all this noise. There wouldn't be bids going in, because as much as it's not maybe him inviting the bid, he's definitely not told them that he doesn't want the bid to go in, because if he told them that, Real Madrid would drop away and start looking at alternative targets. So he is leaving that option open. And that, as I say, in doing that, it is almost like having your cake and eating it. And he's creating the opportunity for that perception to be created. So I just think he has to make the decision now. He has to do something. I've been a big supporter almost of the idea that he would remain silent on it, because not everything does have to be played out in public. But Real Madrid are taking that away from him now. They are playing it out in public, and it's becoming a big issue, and it might become a bigger issue. Certainly, if his form continues in that way, and we see more performances like that, then it will be a huge issue. So. I think it's just something he has to address now, and not necessarily even has to address it publicly, but he has to say to Real Madrid whether he's going or not. He has to bring an end to this circus, and he has to give Liverpool a good idea of what he wants to do, because this can't continue. It's not sustainable, because that was as poor as I've ever seen him in Liverpool's shirt, and whether it was linked to this or not, as I say, the perception's there.
And he needs a reaction on the pitch as well. This is one bad game, one really poor game. But as you say, he's now seen a glimpse, and only a small glimpse from only one game, of what will happen if he puts in substandard performances. Stay or go. If he puts on substandard performances for the rest of the season, it's going to tarnish his Liverpool legacy. That's it's an unfortunate fact that if he takes his eye off the ball, God forbid Liverpool miss out on trophy, but partially because of that form as well, it will definitely tarnish his legacy. So the thing he needs more than anything now is a good performance on the pitch to put that one to bed, show it was a one-off, just a blip, and maybe it's the kick he needs to show, okay, I can't get away with this even in one game. Okay, big game against biggest rivals, if you're going to pick one game not to do that, it's that game. But it's sort of showing him he won't be able to get away with it, the fans. I felt maybe he got away with it slightly with Arne Slot. I think he should have taken him off earlier. We praised Arne Slot a lot for his in-game management, but I think he got that one wrong. And I do wonder, this is just speculation, but I wonder whether he was thinking of the situation as a whole. If you bring Alexander-Arnold off at half-time or even 60 minutes, I know that's when the goal started going in, but that then becomes an even bigger story. Trent's not going to be happy about that, and maybe even nudges him a bit closer to the exit door. I wonder if that came into his thinking, rather than this is the best to win this match. I wonder if that came into Slot's thinking, but I don't think his patience is going to last too many more performances with that, especially with Conor Bradley waiting in the wings as well.
To be honest, the only reason I think that he held off making that substitution early was the fact that Conor Bradley was just back, and that he was just back from a hamstring injury specifically. The risk of re-injury there is quite high. They're very, very cautious, from my experience, this kind of football staff, in terms of returns from muscle injuries. They're very, very careful about that. So I just think he didn't want to throw Conor Bradley in. But again, I don't think Conor Bradley's performance did Trent any favours as well. He was on the pitch for around 10 minutes, and I think he wins 3 out of 3 duels. He just looked more committed. He looked like someone who wanted to be there, which is not, right or wrong, it's not the vibe that you got from Trent, was it either? So, just not a helpful day for him in all, really. And, I did think some of the stuff from fans kind of went too far. But one thing I would say is that they've actually been quite patient about this, really. Like I say, I haven't heard anything out of them regarding this at all this season, or even prior to this season, or any suggestions of kind of discord about it or unhappiness. But if you are leaving the door open to go into Real Madrid, that in itself says something, doesn't it? It kind of, if you're a diehard Liverpool fan, it's maybe not something you would necessarily do. So the fact that they've kind of cracked was inevitable, really. And as I say, it just speaks to the fact that I think a decision just has to be made, and this has to be put to bed, because you know, he's possibly going to have more poor games between now and the end of the season. That is football. Maybe not, hopefully not as bad as that. But he might have a game where it just doesn't work out for him for whatever reason. And if that happens, then we have to listen to that again. It becomes a bigger story again. It's just toxic, and it's absolutely not what Liverpool need. And as much as Liverpool themselves are responsible for this contract situation, the fact it's got here, you know, the change in sporting directors, the power that Jurgen Klopp was given, these are all factors. I do think that the player himself has played a role as well. So he's not entirely without blame.